Hello, Lighthouse. My name is Jolene, and if you don't know me, I am the ninth grade girls counselor. Today, I will be kicking us off in the Women of the Bible series, which I am super excited for. And as you can see, I don't have a fancy mic or camera setup like Josh and Dom, but that's fine. I'm literally sitting on my bedroom floor, but I think it's kind of charming. I don't know, could just be me though. Anyways, if you're new here, welcome to Lighthouse. It's the official youth ministry of Austin Chinese Church, and I hope that you find your time with us to be fruitful. And for true YouTuber effect, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. You know the drill. Anyways, today we'll be studying Martha and Mary as our first lesson of the Women of the Bible series. So let's get started. Alright, so before we get into the story of Martha and Mary specifically, I wanted to kind of give y'all my reasons for why studying women of the Bible is super important, besides the fact that women are just awesome people in general. But yeah, so I have three main reasons, and these are like my personal reasoning / observations, so take them as you will. So my first one is that there are lessons that are uniquely learned from women. So I think that just because like women and men do have different characteristics, I think there's a lot of experiences that women have that like everyone can learn from, including men. And my second reasoning is that it demonstrates the role that women play in God's plan. I think that especially in like society, we can get this message that like I don't know, there's certain differences between men and women that make one group more superior, but I think that we often overlook the fact that both men and women play important roles in God's plan, and that God designed men and women to play different roles, like for very specific reasons. And then the third reason I have is that it inspires the way that we view and treat women. So again, with the society thing, I think we're all aware of like gender equality, like conversations happening. And I think that sometimes we don't really know how to respond, but as usual, the Bible is our ultimate guidebook for everything, including gender equality conversations. So I think that if you're ever like confused or don't know how to respond, I think going back to the Bible and kind of reading through the experiences of women in the Bible and how God treats them, I think it can be a great reference point for all of us, and also like for women ourselves. I think it's a great reference point and how we should view ourselves as well. So yeah, those are just my reasons, but you guys can form your own reasons as we continue in this series. But yeah. Okay, so now that we covered that, I'm going to introduce you guys to the story of Martha and Mary. So I'm sure you guys have heard of them at some point, maybe. But I like this story a lot because I think it relates to my own life and just my own struggles a lot. And you'll see why. But for now, we're just going to read in the Bible about the story of Martha and Mary, and it's in Luke 10:38-42, and it'll be on your screen, I think. But the reason I'm looking down is because my laptop is down here. I need to read from it. So I'll be reading through this passage because it's relatively short. Yeah, so follow along. So it starts, "Now as they went on their way, Jesus entered a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her house, and she had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teaching. But Martha was distracted with much serving, and she went up to him and said, 'Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her then to help me.' But the Lord answered her, 'Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things, but one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her.'" Okay, I'm going to start this off with some character profiling, call it what you will. So we're going to start with Martha. So I'm sure that you guys have made your own observations while reading the passage. Hopefully you have. So Martha is more of the task-driven type. As you can see from the passage, she was the one who's kind of like running around doing all the tasks and making sure that everything was ready for Jesus. So definitely task-driven. You can call her like a master planner slash administrator type. Very responsible. Efficiency is key. Like I bet she's the type of person who would, like to get things done fast, quickly, and just in the smoothest way possible. And in my opinion, she's like the modern day type A. So if you know anything about type A, type Bs, type A's are definitely more of the planning, go by the schedule, go by the book type, which is definitely Martha. And then she's focused on serving Jesus. And she is a great example of kitchen service, which is, I'm going to go more into detail on what that is in a few slides down. But I put in this slide, AKA it me, because it is. Because I am, if you need to like envision someone in real life who is a Martha, that's me. Like, if you don't know me, I'm very type A. I love always doing things. I always need to be like productive, and I like hang on to my planner for dear life. Like, I write everything in there, I follow it religiously. Yeah. It can be a problem sometimes, but yes, I am a definite Martha. And then, so next we're gonna go and discuss Mary. Okay, so the second sister is Mary of Bethany. So here I've used the word mellow. So mellow people are kind of like go with the flow, like easy breezy, you know? And so in the passage, she is like the one who's sitting at Jesus' feet, just kind of like listening to him, not really helping Martha. She's kind of more focused on like being with Jesus. And here I also put pause and smell the roses, because that's totally what I imagine her doing, or like I imagine that's her attitude towards life, is like she'd rather just take it slow and enjoy the things around her rather than always just like scampering around the place, like Martha would. And then I said a posture of listening. So as I said, she was just sitting there like Jay chillin', listening to Jesus. And then I've put here extravagant love, because I think that like that's something that comes to mind when I think of the way that Mary is responding to Jesus, like because she loves him so much. It's like a kind of love that where she would just drop everything just to like be with him, which is why I put that phrase. And then she is a demonstration of living room intimacy, which I will explain also in a few slides down. But yes, those are just kind of brief descriptions of who Mary and Martha are. Alright, starting with kitchen service. So again, as a reminder, Martha is a demonstration of what someone who is heavily involved in kitchen service would look like. So as you can probably assume, a lot of it is like deeds, like doing things, like tasks, responsibilities. And then like, I always think that like service or like deeds or tasks or whatever you call it, like they should be an outpouring of God's love. So it's like, because you love God, it drives you, it motivates you to do these or acts of service or like deeds. And then I put here serving others. So like that's kind of what we think of, I guess, when we think of deeds, is like ways that or things that we can do to serve others and serve God. And I think when we serve others, we often like imitate Christ, or it should be an imitation of Christ, because like Jesus is our example for everything, right? And I think Jesus, when he was on earth, he definitely his like number one priority was like serving God and serving others. And there's a lot of things that we can learn from the ways that Jesus served the people around him. And I put 3 phrases here. One is on our way, out of our way, and in all kinds of ways. So basically this is describing like I guess what service looks like what kitchen service looks like or should look like. So on our way is basically saying that you should be serving like at all times, basically like on your way to a destination, like you should be having like a serving mindset. So for example, if we're looking at Jesus, like oftentimes when Jesus was traveling to like a different city or town, he would like stop along the way because like people needed help, and he like, it wasn't like he was like, oh sorry, like I gotta go, like I'm running late, I can't stop to help you. No, he helped them, right? He like dropped everything to help them. And out of our way, like not only should we be serving on our way, but also like we should be willing to like, even if it's not like, you know, a convenient stop, like we should still be willing to like drop everything to serve other people and to serve God, because like God doesn't call us to be selfish, right? He calls us to be selfless. And then in all kinds of ways. So service, as I'm sure you guys know, like can look a lot of different things. Like after all, like we have like all kinds of service teams at church too. Like you can be a worship team, you can serve by leading a small group, or like be on a welcome team, logistics, you name it. So that's what I mean by all kinds of ways. And then kitchen service should not be optional for Christians. Yeah, I think that's pretty self-explanatory, but it shouldn't be something like, oh, I'll just leave it to other people to do. Like that's, you know, service, like some people are skilled in that, I'm not. No, it's like, if you're a Christian, like you should be willing to serve, right? Okay, and then I put that Martha allowed the service to agitate her. So I think like this can become like a bad thing when you allow it to kind of take over your entire like attitude, because obviously when you're doing things, I think you can get pretty tired or like just burnt out, and if you're just so focused on completing the task, we can often overlook or neglect like the truly important thing, in this case being Jesus. So yeah, I think that's like an overall weak point of kitchen service. I call it a weak point. So like someone who spends a lot of time in the kitchen might overlook the need to just chillax and just sit and be with God. I think personally this is like a huge struggle for me, is like I'm so task oriented that I'm not willing to drop whatever I'm doing to spend time with God, and I think that can get in the way of a lot of like my attitude and my mentality and just like my overall like how I'm feeling. So yeah, that is kitchen service. On the flip side, we have living room intimacy. LOL, if you see the pictures, this is totally my aesthetic. I'm like planning for my future house, and this is my aesthetic. But anyways, this entails intimacy with God. And so what that looks like is like spending a lot of time with God, like just spending really personal, like one-on-one time with God, and just, you know, sitting in his presence like Mary did. And so, like all we really need to do is just to come to him. Like he's already waiting for us, you know, he wants to spend time with us, but like we are the ones who are like, nah, I have better things to do. So really all we just need to do is just, you know, come to God. And like he's always waiting for us. And this can also like finding rest. I think we like get so caught up in our tasks that we forget to rest. I forget to rest all the time. It's so bad. But rest is super important. And I think also our definition of rest can be like wrong sometimes. I think a lot of us, our definition of rest is like Netflix and chill, or like, I don't know, watching TikToks all day. But I think those things provide us like very short-term rest. Like you would feel good for like maybe an hour and then that's it. So I think finding rest in this aspect means that we draw from God to like find our rest. And I think like honestly, in the times that I do intentionally sit down and spend time with God, I do leave feeling refreshed, because I think God speaks to me in those times, because like I finally like, you know, I'm finally willing to ignore all the outside noises and distractions, and so that makes space for God to like, you know, speak to me, and for me to be able to hear that like without all the outside noise, which is why it's so important to just spend intimate time with God, because it's in those spaces where he can really like, where you can really like open your ears to like hear what he has to say to you. And then relationship is a two-way street. Yes, it is. Yeah, so think about your like friendships. Like how do you grow in that? Like you have your initial encounter, like hi, my name is blah blah blah, and then like where do you go from there? Like how do you get to know that person? Like you obviously have to spend time with them, right? And it doesn't work if one friend is like always the one initiating. I think it would get pretty tiring for that person, and I think eventually the friendship would just die. Sorry, but it's true. So likewise with God, with our relationship with God, we need to be pouring into it as well. Like, I think like God definitely pours into this relationship a lot, and like we often kind of are the ones that don't put in our equal share of time and effort. So I think it's really important that we realize that, and then realize that, yeah, we need to, work at this relationship. We need to be willing to spend time with God, so that we can like learn about our relationship with God. And that comes in the form of spending intimate time with Him. Yeah, and then an obstacle to this is like busyness. I think a lot of us, like we, get distracted with all the responsibilities of this world. And then we always make the excuse like, oh, we're too busy to like, spend an hour with God, 30 minutes with God. We're too busy. We have like A, B, and C on our schedule. Yeah, so that's a huge obstacle, I think. And then I've put here like a formula, kind of. Yeah, formula. I said prayer plus the word plus time equals intimacy with God. So these are like kind of the three key elements of like what it looks like to have intimacy with God. So you have prayer, like talking to God, and then the word, which can be considered like God talking to you. Like I think He has a lot of things to say to us through the Bible. And then time. Time is super important. Like we have to be super intentional with our time. And like making time for God. Yeah, which is something I'm personally bad at, but it's so worth it if we like remember that God is like our number one priority. He should be. I think we forget that, but yeah, I think we realize that God is our number one priority. Then like we hopefully out of that will be motivated to spend time with Him. Okay, and then similar to kitchen service, living room intimacy also has a weak point. So I think someone who spends a lot of time in the living room might overlook the need to respond to God's call to action. So in other words, that person would end up being like a passive listener. Like all they would do is just listen. But then like what do they do with what they hear? Nothing. So yeah, I think that's like also something to keep in mind. So at the end of this passage, Jesus says that Mary has chosen the good portion. So what is the good portion? So I'm gonna first talk about like what it's not. And it begins with the definition of sin, which is anything that separates us from God, right? So I think that includes like tasks or like deeds or things that we just get caught up in that like take us away from spending time with God. I'm not saying that kitchen service is not the good portion. I'm just giving an example of like how we can get carried away with kitchen service, and then that can lead to us sinning. So I guess like one way to begin this process of having the good portion, I guess, is taking spiritual inventory. So that basically means that you're looking at yourself, like being honest with yourself, and just like kind of asking yourself, where am I at in my faith? Like, am I missing something? Am I missing the point? Because I think you have to realize that you're empty before you're willing to be filled, right? You're obviously like, if you have a cup of water and like someone asks you if you want more, like if it's full, you're not gonna want more, right? Like you have to realize that it's empty before you're willing to like fill it up. So that's what it means by like saying taking spiritual inventory. And then of course like a hunger for God. So hopefully we be so hungry for God that we would be willing to drop everything to just to spend time with Him and just to learn more about Him. We're always hungry for more because there's endless knowledge. Like God is just so big that we can't really ever fully understand Him. So like hopefully we as Christians are always hungry to know more about God. And then I think something that's really cool is like realizing that the good portion isn't something that we have to make a journey to find. It's not something we have to like go to like the mountains to like find this like very special treasure or whatnot. It's already inside of us. And what I mean by that is that like Jesus Christ, like, you know, he dwells in us through the Holy Spirit. And so it's already inside of us. We don't have to go find it. And so also on this slide, I've included 3 keys to letting Jesus in. Because, like, of course, it's a choice that we have to make, right? We have to, you know, choose to spend time with Jesus and choose to let him into our life. So the 3 keys are consistency, creativity, and conversation. So consistency, super important. As you all know, I think, like, I'm not the best at this in terms of devotion. But yeah, I think consistency is really important. It's like a discipline. Because, like, you know, we should be spending time with God every day and, like, keeping up that consistency and spending time with God. Because that's the way that we'll just be able to learn more about him, just like every day. And then creativity. I think no matter how routine driven someone is, I feel like it gets dull at some point. I think this is a huge reason why burnout happens, is because you just get caught in the same cycle of doing the same things, and it gets like super dull and boring, and you're just like, I don't want to do this anymore. So I think creativity is something that we don't really think of a lot as being important, but it is. And like this might look like finding new ways to spend time with God. So like if you always just like the way that you spend time with God is just through prayer, and you find that it's not working for you anymore, then like maybe another way would just be to like meditate and listen to worship music. Just one example out of many. But yeah, that's creativity. And then conversation. This is kind of like what I was referencing when I was talking about the two-way street relationship with God. So like you know, communicating with God and like talking to God. And I think like this is where the two-way street comes in. Like I think a lot of times we talk at God, like we'll like do our devotions or whatnot, and then we'll just like journal like all our thoughts, like rant to him about like all the things that are wrong in our life, like all the ways that he needs to come through for us. But then we never like wait for him to like respond. And I think a lot of times it's because we don't know how to listen to his response or how to hear his response. But I think like one thing that I was told that really changed my perspective was like when I read the Bible, I should read it as like a love letter from God to me. So I think it just makes, I mean, it's like really cheesy, but I think it makes it definitely more intimate and more personal. And it just like, when you approach the Bible with that perspective, I think it opens up a lot of like doors for you to see how like the Bible relates to your life. Like even though the Bible like doesn't reference your life specifically, like it doesn't call you by name in the Bible, I think like it's still very relatable. And I think we just need to look for ways that it connects. And so that's what I mean by conversation. All right. So then next we're going to move to achieving balance. I mean, like in this case, it'd be like achieving balance between service and worship, aka like balance between the kitchen service and the living room intimacy. Like that would be ideal situation, right? Like a mixture of Mary and Martha. But yeah, so I guess like even though balance is really difficult to achieve, I think there's a lot of like ways that we can at least move towards it. And I'm gonna talk about kind of what that looks like in this specific situation. So I guess like one part of achieving balance is saying yes to both the call of duty and the call of devotion. So being willing to respond to God's call, as well as being willing to like spend time just in worship. And also saying yes to God does not mean saying yes to everything. This is so important. I think for me, this is something that I am still working on. I have a very hard time saying no, just because I'm a people pleaser and I always want to make people like me. So a lot of what that looks like is me just wanting to just say yes to everything that people ask of me, because I think that they'll like me more. And while, like, yes, sure, people will like you if you say yes, but I think, like, you need to realize that we are humans at the end of the day and we have our limits. So we can't possibly say yes to everyone and everything. Like, I think at some point it just really wears you out. And so, yeah, part of, like, you know, achieving that balance is realizing that, you know, yes may not always be the right answer. And I think that comes with just really knowing yourself and knowing your limits, and just being honest with yourself about that. And another point is finding the right rhythm for your life. So I think we often think of balance as like equilibrium or like equal parts. So like 50% and 50%. So like we should have 50% kitchen service, 50% living room intimacy, and that's balance. But I don't think it's that. I think, like, you know, like, I feel like it's really hard to say that, like, say what is 50% for everyone. So I think, like, more importantly, it's about, like, finding that rhythm that, like, works well in your life. And honestly, I can't really tell you what that looks like because it's your life. Like, you know, like, the reason why I've capitalized your is because it's really important for us to all recognize that this looks very different for everyone. Like, everyone has different needs just because we all have different personalities. And so I think that's why I say, like, knowing yourself is super important. You have to really, like, know what, like, gets you going or, like, what tires you out. You know, so, like, yeah, I think that's also a process. Just as you live and as you experience more things, then you start to realize, you know, different things about yourself. Like me as a college student now, like, I know a lot of things about myself that I didn't when I was in high school. And I'm sure that going down the road, I'll learn a lot more things about myself that I don't know now. And yeah, so this relates to, like, the next point where, like, I guess it's, like, kind of checking yourself, like, monitoring yourself. And so, like, I guess some big indicators of, like, imbalance is, like, burnout and apathy. Like, burnout is, like, you just get really tired, and you just, you know, don't want to do it anymore. And apathy is just, like, you know, you're just caught in the same routine and you just, like, you've lost all the passion and you've lost sight of, you know, why you started doing whatever it is you're doing. So yeah, those are huge signs of imbalance. And then at that point, you need to be asking yourself, like, do you need more time in the living room or do you need more time in the kitchen? So, like, for me, a lot of times when I get burnt out, it's because I'm just so focused on, like, my responsibilities and, like, I'm like, oh, people expect this of me. If I don't show up today, like, I'm gonna, like, disappoint everyone. And so I think just in that process of, like, serving people, I forget that I also need to be, like, poured into by God. And that's, like, when I need more time in the living room, more time, more intimate time spent with God. And so, like, for me, I guess that's how this, like, monitoring, checking point would work. And the last point I have on here is that kitchen service is the natural result of living room intimacy with God. And I alluded to this earlier when I said that, like, you know, kitchen service should be an outpouring of God's love for us. So it should just be a very natural, like, thing where, like, we know that God loves us and we love God, and just through that we're motivated to serve others. So yeah, that's achieving balance. Okay, I thought it would be really cool to round out this lesson by bringing it back to Martha and Mary and kind of demonstrating how balance is achieved in Martha and Mary's story. So we're going to look at another passage, and it comes from John 12, 1-3, and I will be reading again because it's very short, so just follow along. So it says, 6 days before the Passover, Jesus therefore came to Bethany where Lazarus was, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. So they gave a dinner for him there. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those reclining with him at table. Mary therefore took a pound of expensive ointment made from pure nard and anointed the feet of Jesus and wiped his feet with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. Okay, so I think this is a cool demonstration. I think it's very subtle, so you really have to look at it and analyze it. So I think previously we saw that Martha was just kind of running around and doing this and that and preparing things for Jesus. But in this story, okay, again, this is really subtle, so just track with me. So Martha is still serving. It's very obvious. It literally says Martha served. She's still serving. But this time what's different is that she's in the presence of God. She's with God, with Jesus, in the living room, in his presence. But again, still serving. And then in Mary's case, whereas in the first passage that we looked at, she was just sitting, right? I mean, I don't know if she did anything afterwards, but she was just sitting, not doing anything. And here we see that she actually gives her all. She takes this expensive ointment and anoints the feet of Jesus, and that comes from her love for God and for Jesus. So I think this is a super cool character development moment where it's both women have encompassed both kitchen service and living room intimacy, and I think this is just a really cool demonstration of how we can achieve this in our own lives. Alright, everyone's favorite part, discussion questions. Woo! So I have 3 for us today. The first one I have is, would you consider yourself more of a Mary or more of a Martha, and why? So I gave you guys examples from my own life of why I think I am a Martha. So just take a look at your own life and your own tendencies and habits, and see if you relate more to Mary or more to Martha. And number 2, what are some obstacles preventing you from finding balance between kitchen service and living room intimacy, and how can you move past those barriers? I can already anticipate that some of you are going to be like, school, extracurriculars, but I want you guys to look beyond that. Think deeper. What is truly the root of these issues? Why are you spending more time on school stuff rather than spending time with God? I think this is going to require you to be honest with yourself, and it might be uncomfortable to think of these answers, but it's super important, realizing some of your tendencies. And then the final question is, what are some creative ways you can spend time with God? Think of things that you enjoy doing and let it inspire some ideas. Yeah, I think that God wants us to, he delights in what we delight in, right? So, the hobbies that you have, God has given to you for a reason. So, let that be the inspiration of ways that you can creatively spend time with God. And I think that you would find that once you think of those things, spending time with God might come to you more naturally, or that you'd be more motivated to do it. Yeah, so those are all the questions that I have. I hope you guys have a good discussion time. And I just wanted to close by saying that a lot of the things I talked about came from this book. I don't know if it's backwards for y'all. Hopefully it's not. But it's called Having a Mary Heart in a Martha World. It's by Joanna Weaver. So a lot of things that I referenced in this lesson, and this entire lesson actually, was inspired by this book. It was gifted to me at a time when I was just really overwhelmed with my responsibilities, and it really convicted me. So definitely I recommend this book if you guys feel like you're going through the same struggles, or that you're struggling to find this balance between service and just worship. So yeah, that was my lesson on Martha and Mary. I hope you learned some things from it. But yeah, I hope you guys have a good discussion, and I will see y'all later. Bye.
Our only announcement today is that from December 31st through January 3rd, we won't be having youth retreat, so make sure you inform your parents that it's canceled and yeah, find something else to do.